Turkey is blocking NATO's expansion. It could backfire and hand Putin a propaganda coup. One analyst believes that there are several reasons why Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan left doesn't want to upset Russia's President Vladimir Putin. CNN. When Sweden and Finland declared their intention to join NATO last May, it was seen by many as a poke in the eye for Russia and evidence of a shift in European thinking. Historically, both countries had committed to non-alignment with NATO as the way of avoiding provoking Moscow. The invasion of Ukraine changed that. Both Finland and Sweden, along with the vast majority of NATO allies, would like to see the countries formally join the alliance at the NATO summit on July 11th. However, significant hurdle stand in the way of it becoming the reality. Turkey has yet to give the plan its formal and official blessing. Turkey is not the only nation blocking the move. Hungary has also failed to ratify the Nordics accession, which further muddies the waters. However, right now, getting Turkey on side is considered the priority. Unfortunately, for the pro-NATO gang, Western officials are increasingly pessimistic that Turkey will budge. Officially, Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan objected to Sweden and Finland membership on what he claims are security grounds. Turkey claims that both countries, though particularly Sweden, are harboring militants from the banned Kurdistan Worker Party, the designated terror group in Turkey. Sweden and the United States and Europe. Erdogan says he'd like these individuals to be extradited. Sweden has made clear this won't happen. NATO diplomats are split on whether they think Turkey will buzz before the July summit. Central to both schools of thought is this year's Turkish election, perceived as the biggest political threat Erdogan has faced in years. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg met Swedish and Finnish foreign ministers in July 2022. One NATO diplomat told CNN it's likely that Finland breaks from Sweden and goes for membership alone. The image he has created of the strong man who gets a result for the Turkish people has been shattered, explains Gonu Tor of the Middle East Institute Turkey program. There is a lot of anti-West and anti-Kurd sentiment in Turkey at the moment. This is a good topic for him to bang his drum, and the dramatic U-turn would only make him look weaker. Paul believes that there are other regions that Erdogan doesn't want to upset Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Russia has been a lifeline economically for Turkey after other nations imposed sanctions for their activities in Syria, their cooperation militarily with Russia, and the other hostile activity, Toll explains. Without Russian money, Erdogan would not have been able to raise wages or provide financial support to students. He is now promising mass rebuilding post earthquake, so Russia is still an attractive partner for Erdogan. Like many Western officials, Toll believes the Turkish claims about Sweden and Finland harboring terrorists provide the perfect cover for Erdogan not to engage at the politically inconvenient time on the NATO question. While nothing may come from the talks due between the two the three parties on Thursday. The conversation is taking place about how much political capital Erdogan might have to spend after the election should he win. First, the optimist. This group includes Sweden, Finland, and some of the states that border Russia or used to live under the Soviet sphere. They believe that Turkey, which benefits hugely from being part of NATO, will ultimately do what is in its best interest and drop objections. For this to happen, the officials are bracing for Turkey to make more realistic demands that the handling over of individuals it deems to be terrorist, such as the lifting of sanctions or the US allowing Turkey to buy the fighter jet that the country badly needs to keep its air force up to date. Going for membership alone. Ultimately, the optimists believe that there is a compromise that vastly favors NATO. The alliance, Sweden and Finland have made their case, and NATO has the open door policy for any country wanting to join. Sweden and Finland have more than meet the criteria, so not joining makes the mockery of the alliance, an alliance that Turkey benefits from being a member. One NATO official told CNN that they assumed Erdogan would wait for the summit before conceding so that he can boast in the praise of all his Western allies. The far larger group along officials who spoke with CNN are pessimists. They think the chances of Erdogan shifting his position before July 11th are as good as zero and already thinking beyond that summit. I think it's increasingly likely that Finland breaks from the Sweden and goes for membership alone, one NATO diplomat told CNN. Other members of the alliance still see a real prospect of both countries being blocked and considering how best NATO can handle such a scenario. Multiple NATO officials and diplomats told CNN that danger here is Turkey's bloc feeding the Kremlin narrative that the West and NATO are divided. The alliance's job at that point will be to make clear that even if they are not members, Finland and Sweden are now effectively in lockstep with NATO. They might not be members, but they're as close partners as it's possible to be, and they are not neutral anymore. The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is considered to be a EU leader closest to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Even if Turkey can be scored off, there is a separate, albeit less complicated issue of Hungary. Prime Minister Viktor Orban has publicly indicated he is not opposed to the Nordic nations joining, but keeps finding ways to stall the decision becoming official. There are few regions Orban would want to drag his feet. Finland and Sweden have both criticized Hungary for its rule of law record. He addressed this in the recent interview, asking how can anyone want to be our ally in the military system while they're shamelessly spreading lies about Hungary. Orban is considered to be EU leader closest to Putin. Katalin Kicse, a Hungarian member of the European Parliament, describes the Orban's blocking of the Sweden and Finland bids as quite simply another favor to Vladimir Putin. She believes that Orban, who has been accused of drifting towards autocratic leadership, has invested over a decade to copy his policies and build up a Putinist model, and that any perceived NATO victory over Putin puts his whole regime in jeopardy. It's possible that Orban is hanging on in order to get concessions from other EU member states where Hungary has been accused of violating all manner of EU laws. The result has been withdrawing of EU funds and scorn from the bloc. While NATO and the EU are separated entities, they share many members, and it's plausible that bilateral diplomacy could see some give and take between Hungary and its EU counterpart. For all Orban's foot dragging, though it's widely assumed that if Turkey can be squared off, Hungary will drop its opposition to Finland and Sweden joining NATO. The irony isn't lost on many that one of the main reasons Putin gave for invading Ukraine was put a step to what he claimed was NATO expansion. The fact that his aggression might have pushed historically unaligned, unaligned country into NATO is still seen by most in the West as a huge own goal by the Kremlin. Until the agreement is reached, however, the future of the alliance remains somewhat up in the air. Finland and Sweden have effectively picked a side since the start of the Ukraine conflict. It seems unlikely that they will return to the position of neutrality if the war were to suddenly end. The risk for NATO and the broader Western alliance comes if they fail to join the alliance at all, and the Kremlin can use it for propaganda purposes. If that happens, even if the war suddenly ends, the narrative of the divided West will continue to be the drum that NATO's opponent can bang.